The story of Dr. Frankenstein and his abominable creation is one that has been retold countless times. From stories about young boys bringing their beloved pet back from the grave, to stories about Frankenstein's monster falling in love and finding his bride, people have loved the story of one individual going against the odds. Today's episode is about love, loss, and bringing to life a story that has stood the test of time. This is the tale about the fateful night that Mary Shelley wrote the story of Frankenstein's monster.
Hi, young historians! Welcome to another episode of Anytime Now. I'm Brooke, co-founder of Honest History. If you've listened to this podcast before, then you know that one moment can change the course of history forever. And today's story is no different. What started out as a fun game to pass the time turned into a story that would change stories forever. In fact, Mary Shelley probably didn't even realize that she was creating an entirely new genre of storytelling called science fiction. The story of how Mary Shelley came up with the idea of Frankenstein is truly remarkable. So let's get back to it.
The air was cold, and the wind beat the tree branches against the windows, causing a loud thump, thump, thump sound that echoed through the cold house like a drum before a battle. It was called the year without summer, and what Mary Shelley was hoping would be a relaxing vacation in the Swiss Alps had been far from thrilling. Mary recalled, "It proved a wet, ungenial summer, and incessant rain often confined us for days to the house, leaving little for Mary, her husband, Percy Shelley, and Mary's sister to do to stay occupied. But, as luck would have it, one of the so-called bad boys of European society was living just down the street and was willing to provide ample entertainment for the Shelley family. Celebrity poet Lord Byron had a reputation that far preceded his arrival to Lake Geneva in May of 1816. Known as being mad, bad, and dangerous to know, Byron was known for his entertaining poetics and for creating drama everywhere he went. Mary's husband Percy, who himself was a poet of reputable esteem, became friends with Lord Byron because of their love of words and flair for the dramatic. Percy himself had recently endured scandal when he ran away with Mary when she was just 17 and forsaking his wife. The friendship between Lord Byron and Percy Shelley was a match made in heaven, and the two men often sought each other's company during the harsh storms that plagued their summer vacation. One dark, cold evening, the Shelleys found themselves bored to tears as yet another summer storm swept across the lake and shattered their plans. Before the storm could get any worse, Percy made the decision that they would all go to Byron's mansion, Via Diodati, down the street for a night of entertainment. Mary, who was eager for something to keep her occupied, agreed and wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, bracing herself for the incessant cold that would surely rattle her bones the moment she left the house. On warmer days, Mary and her husband spent their days on Lake Geneva or wandering along its shores. At the time, Lake Geneva was a paradise for creatives looking to escape the hustle and bustle of the loud cities and distresses of European society. The Swiss Alps provided the perfect paradise for Percy to work on his poetry, while also pushing Mary to do the same. Mary regarded herself as a writer, though was hard-pressed to produce anything she was proud of. Mary later wrote, "My husband was from the first very anxious that I should prove myself worthy of my parentage and enroll myself on the page of fame. He was forever inciting me to obtain literary reputation, which, even on my own part, I cared for then, though since I have become infinitely indifferent to it." Mary wanted to write, but couldn't find the fountain of inspiration from which to draw upon. At least, not yet. By the time they arrived at Byron's mansion, lightning streaked across the sky and thunder rumbled from the trees. Waving them quickly in the house, Byron guided them inside and to the main sitting room, where a fire crackled in the fireplace and candles created long and haunting shadows in the darkness. Sitting beside her husband, Mary looked around the room, feeling the weight of boredom heavy on her shoulders. But, like the true host and great entertainer he was, Lord Byron had a plan. Pulling out a large tome, he began reading a story about a young man who vowed his love to a young maiden, only to find himself in the arms of a pale ghost. Another story was told, and another. Standing abruptly, Lord Byron proclaimed,
"We will each write a ghost story."
To which the group nodded in acquiescence. Mary recalled, "I busied myself to think of a story to rival those which had excited us to this task, one which would speak to the mysterious fears of our nature and awaken thrilling horror, one to make the reader dread to look around, to curdle the blood and quicken the beatings of the heart." The atmosphere of that summer, cold, dark, and exceedingly dreary, created the sort of environment the members of the group could easily draw upon to create a ghost story. But none had the same sorrow to draw upon as young Mary Shelley. By this time in her life, Mary had experienced more than her fair share of heartbreaking sorrow. Only a few days after her birth, Mary's famous mother, Mary Wollstonecraft, died, leaving Mary to grow up without a mother. After finding love and happiness at 17 with the then-married Percy Shelley, Mary and Percy ran away together, only to discover that Mary was pregnant. 1 month after delivering her first child, the baby tragically passed away. Shortly thereafter, Mary received the tragic news of the death of her beloved half-sister. With the loss of her sister and child still heavy on her heart, Mary tried to come up with a ghost story that would be worthy of her famous peers. Days passed, and the group continued telling ghost stories in the light of the candles as the incessant summer storms raged outside. She listened intently to the creepy and haunting stories of Percy and Byron, but could not find the inspiration of her own. Mary later wrote, "I thought and pondered vainly. I felt that blank incapability of invention which is the greatest mystery of authorship, when dull nothing replies to our anxious invocations. 'Have you thought of a story?' I was asked each morning, and each morning I was forced to reply with a mortifying negative."
Hi, young historians! Time for a quick break from this amazing story to tell you a bit more about Honest History. If you're enjoying this episode, then you'll love Honest History's magazines and books. Each one is filled with important adventures through the past, like the story of Chen Yisao, a Chinese woman who commanded one of the largest pirate fleets in history, to Mansa Musa from Africa, one of the wealthiest people to ever live. You can pick up a copy or subscribe and receive 3 issues delivered straight to your doorstep every 3 months. Just go to honesthistory.co and use code ANYTIMENOW for a 10% discount. That's honesthistory.co and special promo code ANYTIMENOW. Okay, let's get back to the story.
Day after day, Mary was asked about her story, and each day she came back empty-handed. Frustrated that she could not produce a story, Mary tried desperately to come up with a tale. On another evening, similar to the night Lord Byron had proposed the idea of writing ghost stories, Mary listened as Percy and Lord Byron discussed philosophy and the nature of life. Mary observed as the men talked about science and nature and the meaning of life and the possibility of nature being manufactured and brought to life through ways beyond our understanding.
Dr. Erasmus Darwin was a genius. You're quite right, Percy, quite right. Perhaps genius isn't quite the right word, for what would possess a man to preserve a piece of vermicelli in a glass case? Whatever drove the dear doctor to do so, whether it be madness or profound intellect, the fact of the matter is the vermicelli moved. By what extraordinary means we shall never know. I quite like the idea of a mad doctor placing vermicelli in glass cases, don't you, Mary? Good gracious, the witching hour has come and gone. Shall we all retire until morning?
Mary followed Percy to their room and prepared for bed. But when she placed her head upon the pillow, sleep did not come easily. Instead, a vision haunted her thoughts. My imagination, unbidden, possessed, and guided me, gifting the successive images that arose in my mind with a vividness far beyond the usual bonds of reverie. I saw, with shut eyes but acute mental vision, I saw the pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside the thing he had put together. I saw the hideous phantasm of a man stretched out and then, on the working of some powerful engine, show signs of life and stir with an uneasy, half-vital motion. The image of a doctor, a mad scientist, bringing his creation to life through means that defied science, logic, and the order of the natural world, kept Mary awake all night.
It's alive! It's alive!
She tossed and turned, unable to release the terrifying vision from her mind. I must try to think of something else. I've recurred to my ghost story, my tiresome, unlucky ghost story. Oh, if only I could contrive one which would frighten my reader as I myself had been frightened. As the sky changed from deep black to the grayish-blue haze of early dawn, Mary awoke from her restless sleep and announced to the house that she had thought of a story and would put the story to paper that very morning. Sitting at her desk, she began drafting an outline. The first words she put to the page were, "It was on a dreary night in November." By the time she had finished writing, Mary was confident in her story. She had written a short story that beheld the horrific images that plagued her sleep the night before. Putting the story on paper was, in many ways, a relief for Mary. The story haunted her so much that by putting the tale on paper, she thought she could loosen the grip of terror by sharing the story with others, allowing them to share in the collective horror. Mary made her way to the study, where she shared her story with her husband. Papers in hand, Percy paced around the room, his brows furrowed as he read his wife's short story.
Mary, this is extraordinary. It's terrifying. You must keep going. The story is not done.
Percy urged Mary to continue writing. He believed that the story was meant to take a larger form. Mary, who was relieved to have gotten the bones of the story onto paper, went back to writing. Over the course of the next several months, Mary drafted and edited her story. She later said that the core of the story never changed, and that any changes she made were simply to expand on the sections of the story that she had previously written down the morning after that terrible dream. I will add but one word as to the alterations I have made. They are principally those of style. I have changed no portion of the story, nor introduced any new ideas or circumstances. I have mended the language where it was so bald as to interfere with the interests of the narrative, and these changes occur almost exclusively in the beginning of the first volume. After months of work, the story was completed. In 1818, 2 years after the fateful trip to the Swiss Alps during that cold and rainy summer, Mary Shelley anonymously published her novel, Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. The story tells of a gifted scientist, Victor Frankenstein, who sought to bring to life a creature of his imagination. Using his genius and wit, Frankenstein assembles a man-like creature and brings it to life, hoping to create a more beautiful version of mankind. But the creation that emerges is monstrous and repulsive to Frankenstein. The monster, who remains unnamed and is rejected by his creator, escapes his confines and wreaks havoc on the city and Frankenstein himself. The story of Frankenstein was met with mixed reviews. Some regarded the tale as too horrific for general consumption, while other critics praised the author for their brilliant description of life, loss, and the danger of knowledge. But as time passed, Mary's popularity as an author grew, as the public discovered she was the author of the terrific tale. Frankenstein continues to inspire readers and creatives to this day. The novel is frequently read in schools, studied in college, and has been the inspiration for countless movies, books, TV shows, and other forms of media. What started out as a creative exercise to pass the time turned into something far greater than Mary could have imagined. That rainy summer proved that one night, one idea could shape the course of history forever, and also proved that creativity is a powerful tool.
Welcome back! What did you think of this story? It's so fun when a seemingly normal day turns into something so much more. A day when a person wakes up not knowing that would be the day they would make their mark on history. When looking at stories like Mary Shelley's, it's important to remember to always try your best, just like Mary. She wanted to create the perfect scary story and wouldn't rest until she conjured up the perfect tale. Her story is a great reminder to always do your best and to not rush the creative process. A great idea can come at any moment, and it is our job, young historians, to be ready to write it down. That's all for now, but if you want to learn more about amazing writers in history, be sure to check out issue 9 of Honest History magazine. You can learn all about Shakespeare, Chaucer, and many other great storytellers throughout history. See you all next time. This episode was hosted by Bree Pruitt and written by Brooke Knight. Production was led by Randall Lawrence. To learn more about this episode, including more about the host, visit us at honesthistory.co and follow along for updates on social media at Honest History.